I was told that this is the third time that this conference has actually made its way to India, and I would imagine that Roland has pretty much been a part of each one of them. So it would be instructive to get a sense from him on how much has actually changed in terms of the business landscape, the economic landscape, the regulatory environment that everyone was just sort of polling on as well. Roshni, of course, will give us an indication of where things stand as far as India's booming offshoring industry is concerned. The IT services sector has, of course, been one of post-liberalization India's biggest success story, but it is a challenging and a volatile environment, and one that Roshni and many of her tech peers do need to navigate through. And of course, the idea of innovating together, collaborating together, especially in an AI era, the opportunities, the challenges, the perils, the pitfalls, all of that up for discussion. I was also just going back in time, Shivani mentioned that you started your career, Roland, at Siemens as in product, and of course today you're as at the helm of the company as CEO, but you've done pretty much everything in between minus CFO.
Yeah, exactly. I had all roles, maybe except CFO, and I don't want to touch that one.
Well, that's not a conversation that we will get into, but what I do want to start with the both of you before we talk about tech specifically. Roland, I'll start with you. We're at the end of the conference today, and going back in time to the experience that you've had personally with Siemens in India, but more importantly, as a German business looking at India as an opportunity, where would you say things stand today? How much has changed? What is the complexity? What is the opportunity that you see today with respect to India?
I mean, it changed tremendously. You even cannot compare to the past. I mean, when I was running the automotive business for Asia, and 2005, 6, 7, and also in India, we started off just producing kind of components locally, electronics as well, and this was a focus on automotive industry, but the rest was really somehow small. Subsized, so that means, and by the way, we are in this country since, I don't know, more than 160 years. The last 5+ years, the market completely changed. If you look at our markets, this is, we're talking now about growth rates of 8, 9, and 10%, knowing that the GDP is going a little bit slower, but our markets grow by almost 10%, which is unseen of in our strategy discussions which we have. Size-wise, still a gap to the big markets, United States and China, but really catching up. And this is thanks to a massive investment in infrastructure, energy. I'm always saying that it comes in waves: energy, infrastructure, and then comes industry and higher education or healthcare. And we see that this is now really taking place massively. And this is thanks to a good strategy of the government. At the same time, we talk about regulations and the ease of doing business. This improved quite a bit as well. So therefore, for me, if I look at India, the Indian market in particular, it really is a tremendous pickup. Talk very briefly about Asia as well. A little bit the same, because we see that the whole idea of increasing resilience and diversity, Asia sits on, or Indo-Pacific sits on the receiving end.
I will come to what that means in terms of supply chain diversification and how this region is likely to be a big beneficiary of that. But I want to labor on India for just a second longer because we are here in India. What's the outlook now? And I know you're in your silent period, so I'm not asking you to forecast or guide us for the next quarter, but I do want to understand, in terms of global revenue, in terms of contribution to global revenue, India is still fairly small in comparison to the aspiration, the promise, and the potential. What could it look like over the next 5 to 10 years?
So no, this is a budget discussion between Sunil and myself on stage. It's very helpful. No, I mean, just to give you an idea, we have 320,000 people worldwide, 30,000 in India, so it's a little bit shy of 10%. The revenue contribution from India is roughly 3%, so it's underrepresented, but this is picking up. We won a huge order for locomotives, for example, 3 billion order. This was awarded, by the way, in 6 months. This is unheard of, how fast the government is deciding. And so we are picking up volume, and I can imagine that in no time we can reach a level of 5%. And I'm always saying, I can also imagine that India in a certain period of time gets to 10%. I don't mention the year yet, so this is always interesting. And then Sunil is going to figure that out.
Well, no pressure on Sunil for figuring that out, at least not here publicly anyway. But Roshni, let me come to you now, and let's talk about where things currently stand. I mean, HCLTech has grown ahead of industry, so congratulations on that. But as you look at where the world finds itself today, Roshni, the volatility that we've been seeing in the US market, in Europe. Europe accounts for almost, 29% of HCLTech's revenue. Give me a sense of the global outlook before we talk about the road ahead.
So I think if you talk about the tech industry, the biggest inflection point was probably pre-COVID and post-COVID. And I think COVID set many industries all over the world on this hyper, digitization of their journey and what they needed to do, because it was just, you just had to change your operating models if you needed to survive for a lot of industries. And I think only now, I would say in the last quarter or two, despite geopolitics remains a real threat. So I think that that's something that we need to recognize. Not so much in terms of delivery and what we do in business, but I often say that it drives sentiment across various countries. And some of those sentiments is what is actually playing out in macroeconomics. Because I think over the last 1 year, we've had these conversations. Is there going to be recession? Is there not going to be recession? Inflation, supply chain disruptions. There was a reality of what was on the ground, and then there was also what sentiment was driving. And I think that is what has played out for at least an industry like ours in terms of decision making and delayed decision making. The good news is I think technology and digital transformation is a necessary for every industry, every company. So it will be a necessary spend. And it will be, actually a spend is the wrong word. I would say it's a necessary investment for everybody. It is a necessary investment. So that's the good news. I think going back to regulation and the first point, I think that's top of mind for a lot of countries. That's top of mind certainly for Europe as well. We have 220,000 people, 180,000 deliver from India.
Yeah.
But the number that actually for our global delivery is probably growing. And it's because of this regulatory environment. You can't just data privacy.
Yeah.
And a lot of these issues which are top of mind, cause us to want to actually expand a lot more, even though we're global, locally. So I was just reflecting on Germany, and we started our business in Germany in 2001 with actually a carve out of, at that time, a GCC in India.
Okay.
It was tiny. And that's what gave us an entry into one of the largest financial services organizations in Germany. And today, in Germany, we have 3,500 people. And since then, we've done 6 acquisitions in Germany, including ASAP Engineering, which we just did last year, or earlier this year. So it's also growing, growing locally in countries all around the world is almost an imperative. So
it's changing the offshore model and the offshore style of doing business that this industry has actually relied on for a good part of 4 decades now.
Collaborating with industries across geographies. Also, again, for example, for HCL, maybe in comparison to some of our peers, sub 2% of revenue is what we actually do in India.
Yeah.
For being an Indian headquartered company. So I think that we've always been export oriented. That is the way we've grown. I also find HCL's journey is very interesting because when we started in 1976 and we used to manufacture computers for India and we built the tech hardware industry,
ecosystem,
we only did India. And then, one day we just said, close and just completely pivot. So I think that it's also interesting to see what's happening in India and how we can play domestically. I think our models have been built as such that it's from a profitability point of view, not so much growth. I think growth you can get in India.
Profitable growth is the
Profitable
challenge.
growth.
As far as IT services is concerned.
Absolutely.
At least at this point in time.
Absolutely.
But, you know, Roland, let's talk about tech, because that is what we're here to do. And you wrote a piece, you know, a couple of days ago where you said that AI from India is going to perhaps be something that the world should get ready for. We've also just had Jensen Huang of NVIDIA, the CEO here in India, talking about how he believes that India is going to be a leader in an AI era. Mukesh Ambani, the chairman of Reliance Industries, says that he believes that India will do to AI what it did to data, which is make it accessible and affordable. So I want to understand from you, what's your bull case on India in an AI era?
So let me start with our strategy. Our strategy is in one sentence. We combine the real and the digital worlds. Full stop. Sounds easy, it's very complicated. So it's about really getting software to enable hardware in a much better way, shortening development times, cycle times, making our assets more available in the shop, on the ground. Ultimately, what we talk about building, and this is what Jensen and myself are really pushing for, building the industrial metaverse, which is a real-time, photorealistic, physics-based representation of the real world in the digital space. And you can then really simulate everything physics-based and make it then happen in the real world. This is the biggest lever. Why is Jensen behind it? Because I do believe that currently he's surfing a wave of delivering any kind of silicon to data centers for AI. But at the end of the day, this will move to the edge. We have much more edge processing, and then also more heavy lifting edge processing, and that makes a big difference. You need that if you want to build this industrial metaverse. So this brings me to the whole discussion about AI, because it's all about data, how you get data into your system, how you fuse data. By the way, AI doesn't respect data silos. This is a completely new way of looking at markets, because the markets are currently, they're siloed, and in the future it will be really a holistic view. Same holds for sustainability. You cannot optimize sustainability in a silo. So that brings then data and AI together. And since we have such a huge amount of talented people which are working on software and the way how you use software in India, I do believe this is really part of the equation of how to build this industrial metaverse as a synonym for where we want to go for. And therefore, this is a contribution which India can do.